Good evening, Safe Space viewers. It has been a while not a while, maybe a month since I've had a Safe Space conversation. So let me go ahead and give my introductions. Safe Space is a conversational panel that is intended to be free of judgment, harassment, or emotional harm. We ask that you keep an open mind and be receptive to different perspectives. Be okay with being a little uncomfortable and understanding the experiences of others. So it's now November. It's actually November 4th. And November is Diabetes Awareness Month. And so I decided to dedicate a couple conversations to diabetes. Next week, I will have a professional on that's going to provide us with some much needed information about this disease. But today, I've decided to dedicate this episode. I'm dedicating this conversation to the experience of diabetics. Um, as you all may know, my son Alejandro, he is a type 1 diabetic. And my guest today is Liz. She's going to introduce herself and she's going to also pronounce her beautiful last name. And she's going to tell us about her experience with diabetes. So please feel free, if you have any questions, post questions, ask questions during this conversation. So Liz, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi guys. So I'm a type 1 diabetic. Well, technically it's called LADA. It's a type 1.5. But I live here in Chicago, and I was telling Cherise that I was diagnosed as an adult, which is a little bit different than most type 1s. Most type 1s are definitely usually diagnosed when they're young, like preteens, teenage kind of years. Usually, I think when it happens, I've seen some instances where it's like toddlers, which I always feel really bad. But yeah, I've been a diabetic for about 7 years. And I was diagnosed also like late October. So right into Diabetes Awareness Week. But yeah.
Now, what led to your whole experience? Like, how did you find out you actually had diabetes? Like, what took place?
Yeah. So, I mean, I had all the telltale signs, which are like increased thirst. I was always thirsty no matter what I drank. Like I could not quench my thirst. Peeing a lot. I like just always in the bathroom. I would get up multiple times a day, or at night when I was asleep. Like I would just to go to the bathroom. And also with like thirst. So like I would pee and chug a glass of water or two. I had like the tinglies in my fingers and in my toes. I was pretty lethargic. Like I had no energy. Like I was just like sleeping all day. Like I would go to work and then come back and just like knock out. And I lost like 20 pounds in 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was great though. I was like, this is awesome.
Weight loss. Okay, this is no problem.
The last thing, which was the thing that got me to go to the doctor, was my vision. I've always had 20/20 vision. Never needed glasses or anything, and all of a sudden, like I would wake up in the morning, and I remember at the time we were living here in like downtown Chicago in Streeterville, in a high rise. We were on the 24th floor. And there was a giant Molly's Cupcake sign that like the Molly's Cupcakes had just opened up right across the street so I could see it from my window. And it was like a gigantic sign. And all of a sudden I couldn't read Molly's. And I was walking around the streets here in Chicago with like the street signs that are in downtown Chicago. The street signs are like a couple of feet tall that say the names of the street. And I could not see anything. Like it was just all blurry. So I went and I just moved to Chicago, so I didn't have like my primary care here. So I was like, maybe I just need glasses. Let me go schedule like an appointment at a quick clinic, like, you know, those like walk-in places. I went in and I was like, I think I need glasses. And she's like, are you experiencing anything else, any other symptoms? And so I started telling her, it's like, it's really weird, but I've been really thirsty and like peeing a lot. And the nurse there immediately like took my like a finger poke to get my blood test done. And it was like early in the morning. I hadn't eaten anything, and I was in like the 300s. And for those that like don't know what the range is of the blood sugar, I know like those numbers don't mean anything, but we want to stay at 100, right around there is our magic point. Non-diabetics usually hang around like 70s, 80s, and they're fine. Okay. So 300s was a lot. Right there at the quick clinic, because of my age, they said I was type 2. And they gave me metformin right away. And they're like, come back, you know, in 2 weeks, we'll get you a dietitian. But then I called my mommy. And it was funny because when I called my mom, I called her and I was like, hey, Mom, I've got some news to tell you. Don't freak out. It'll be okay. But I was just diagnosed with diabetes. And she's like, I thought you were going to tell me that you were pregnant. I just moved in with my boyfriend. So she was expecting that. And I was like, well, I guess at this point I was 24, and I'm like, I'm glad it's diabetes and not a baby, as awful as that sounds. But yeah, that same weekend she came and got me. She drove 3 hours to pick me up and then take me back home with her. Got me an appointment with my primary care, and I was seen at the University of Iowa with I forget the name of the doctor, but my initial endo was amazing.
Now, for those who don't know the lingo like you and I, what is an endo?
Oh, an endocrinologist.
Yes.
So an endocrinologist is a doctor that does like diabetes and your thyroids, anything in your endocrine system. Yeah, so my original endocrinologist, which it's really hard to find a good doctor that like matches you and is knowledgeable and cares. I think it's also hard to find a match that like because I think with this disease, I'm living with it. I'm making those decisions all the time. There is no doctor telling me this is how much medication you need right now. This is what you need.
You're talking about living your day-to-day, everyday life.
Yes. So when I was diagnosed, she was amazing. She ran like a full set of panels because of my age. At first, I was diagnosed with type 2. But when I talked to her, she was like, you're definitely not a type 2. She's like, you're healthy. Like you're a little bit older, but she's like, you're not overweight. My diet has never been the best, but it wasn't like, I was chugging 2 liters of soda. So she's like, you don't fit the criteria for a type 2. Okay. So she did run, so with type 1 diabetes, it's an autoimmune disease. Your own blood cells, your own white blood cells attack your pancreas, where there are beta cells, and the beta cells make the insulin. So she tested me for a bunch of antibodies. There are different kinds of antibodies that can cause type 1. And so she tested me for a bunch. A lot of them came back negative, and then one of them did come back positive. And she's like, yeah, you're definitely a type 1. She started me on an insulin regimen right there and then. And I went through, it's called a honeymoon phase, which happens, I think, a lot, is what she said. She's like, for a while, your numbers will go back to normal just because you gave your pancreas like a little bit of a break. It'll be able to kick back up. So for, I think, like 3 or 4 months, my numbers went back to normal with just like it's a long-acting insulin that it stays in your system for 24 hours. So it keeps your base kind of steady. And that did the trick. Right now, I'm on an insulin pump and a Dexcom, which is a continuous glucose monitor. But yeah, and I'm sure you know all about that. I was telling you, like, as an adult living with it, it's tough, but it's like, it's my own decisions, my own body. Like, I get it. As a mom of a teenage boy, I could not imagine.
Yeah. So I'm going to share my story, and then we're going to come back and going to ask you some more probing questions about, being a diabetic. So my son Alejandro, it was during the month of November. So let me back up. Okay. Alejandro, he's an athlete. He's on the football team. He plays lacrosse, sports. He's a sports, he's an athlete. So in July, he went he had his annual checkup, and everything was perfect, normal, football season. And then I started to notice, I want to say mid-October, late October, he was starting to lose weight. He was very lethargic, sluggish. And, I'm just as a mom, I'm thinking like, And, yeah. And I talked to my husband. He's like, oh, well, he has football, he's school, he just has a lot going on. And I don't want to be, because I always tend to be that helicopter mom. And I was like, okay. And, in the back of my mommy brain, it's like, no, something's wrong. Something's wrong. And fast forward a week, he was just really tired and sleeping. And I look, I'm like, that's not him. That's not him. And the coach was like, usually Alejandro is really energetic during practice. He's a little slow and, he's not himself. And I was like, wait a minute. Now I know there's something wrong. He's not going, hanging with his friends like he usually does. He just comes home, and also drinking a lot of water. He's always thirsty, back and forth to the restroom. And I'm like, and then it was just one day, I'm a teacher. So I came in from school. Usually I'm at school like maybe an hour or two after dismissal. But at this particular time, I said, no, I'm going to go home. I'm going to see what's going on, because I don't know. I'm going to take him. That morning, I called the doctor and I got an acute care. That's when you can come to the doctor's office and they will see you. You probably wait for an hour or so, but I was like, you know what, that's fine. So I got home and he's laying on the couch, and it's like, I looked at him and it was like, oh my gosh, why he's too thin. And I called my husband. I was like, he's thin. He's like, he has football practice. And I'm like, no, he's too thin. And so we went to the doctor's office. Now, mind you, we were just there in July, the end of July. So the nurse that we always see, I saw her reaction. She didn't say anything. When we walked into the doors, I saw her reaction, and her reaction was like, oh, wow. And she was like, hi, what's going on? I was like, I have an acute care appointment for Alejandro. And she went to the back and they brought him back immediately. So usually, like, I have 4 kids. So when you go to acute care, you say hi to the nurse, whatever. And then you go down and you have a seat for about an hour or so until the doctor can get with you. When she saw him, knowing that she saw him, he was nice and healthy, and he wasn't like a skeleton like he was. She immediately went to the back and they was like, okay, we want you to come back. We're going to take urine and we're going to take some blood. And I'm sitting there, I was like, it's like, there's nothing good about this. Something is wrong. And I'm thinking to myself, I was like, my baby has cancer. And that's the only thing I chalk, because I mean he was like a skin on a skeleton. And I'm just thinking, I was like, my baby has cancer. How am I going to deal with this? How am I going to deal with this? So the doctor and the nurse comes back in and is like, we're rushing him to the emergency room. He's going into diabetic coma. And I'm like, what and I, I'm speechless, because I'm like, I don't have diabetes. My husband don't have diabetes. My mom doesn't. I'm like, I'm like, what do you mean? And it was just happening so fast. So we get to the emergency room. I've never been in a situation where the emergency room was prepped to receive a patient.
Yeah.
I've been to doctor's office where they're like, oh, your child is dehydrated, so go ahead to the ER so that you can hydrate them, or their fever is too high, so yeah, we want you to go to the ER. And you go to the ER and you wait a couple hours. Once we got to the ER, they immediately rushed him to the back. And I'm there, I'm crying. I'm like, what is this? Like, it was just happening so fast. And, they were working on him in the back. And then I couldn't see him. It was about an hour. And when I tell you, I was so fearful. I was in tears. I was just like, like what's going on? And then my husband, he got to the emergency room. And so eventually we were able to go back and see him. And when I tell you, he had wires and stickers and everything. And I'm saying to myself, what is going on? I just, I lost it. I start crying. I was like, what's happening? And they're letting me know that he's a type 1 diabetic. I was like, no, he was just at the doctor in July. He's completely healthy. There's something else. There's something wrong. There's like, no, his pancreas does not produce any insulin. His pancreas no longer produces insulin. He's a diabetic. His sugar is way too high, and if we don't get it down, he will go into a coma. And I just like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. So he's in a hospital. And then when I tell you the school that he was at, the school he graduated from, I must say, Chicago Hope Academy, absolutely love them, support them. The president of the school came. I think half of the football team came, this is pre-COVID. Okay. When I tell you, they were there to support him.
Yeah.
Even though, only a few could come back, but they were there, once he got transported to his room. It was just an experience that I did not expect.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't ready for it. And as a mom, I'm thinking, it's like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And
how do I fix him? How do I fix him?
Yes, that's what I was like, how do I fix him? And it's like, his pancreas doesn't produce insulin. It was just like, that's it. It does not produce insulin. So
your pancreas
he has to take drugs to live.
Yeah.
And so once we a week into his stay at the hospital, he was there for a while. My husband, my family, yes, for over a week. And we had to take classes on how to just understanding how to feed him, because at this point I didn't know. And so I'm thinking, I was like, okay,
no more candy, no more food.
Yeah, just he's gonna eat fruits and vegetables, lean meat, and there we go. Through this class, I learned, no, some fruits and vegetables are so filled with sugar. And I'm like,
it's all carbs.
Wait a minute. Liz, when I tell you, it's a whole nother lifestyle. It really is.
It's scary. Like, I think, like I keep saying, like, for you as a mom to have your heart out there somewhere else, and like, especially a teenage boy, I can't imagine. I can't.
It's crazy, because when he graduated from high school, it was I think the senior dinner or something like that. And Chicago Hope Academy, it's a small private Christian school. So his graduating class, I want to say, was maybe 30 or 40 students. So at the dinner, everyone was, reminiscing about the school year. And they were making jokes about, oh my gosh, it was so hilarious how Alejandro would lose his insulin bag and the school would shut down and everyone was like, did he leave it in this room? He can't find his insulin. And I'm sitting there like,
what?
oh, are you kidding me? What? Oh, he'd be walking around. We know he needs sugar, and he would be like, and we knew that it's time for him to take his insulin, but he couldn't find. And I was there like,
yeah,
this is what we're doing. And I'm thinking to myself, when he went off to college, I was like, he was in a small school. Everyone knew.
Yeah.
He's going off to college. And, I told him, I was like, well, once you're in college, you're not going to play football because you're diabetic. And he looked at me like, you crazy. And I'm thinking like, but you're diabetic. You can't do it. Me being a mom was like, you can't do this. You can't do that. And he was like, I may have diabetes, but my life does not stop because I have diabetes. So I had to learn through him and his perseverance through this.
Yeah.
It was just like, he taught me.
Yeah.
And I had to understand, like, you cannot put boundaries on his life. He has to manage diabetes, but you can't allow it to stifle him as a person and who he is.
Is he on the CGM?
And seeing that's now that he's an adult, he doesn't live with me. I don't get to make those decisions for him anymore. I don't know. It's because I would always be on him. Have you been to the endocrinologist? The nurse called. You haven't been to an appointment. You haven't downloaded your numbers. You haven't. Now he doesn't live with it. I'm like, I'll ask.
Can you share your A1C?
Like, what are your numbers? How did you take insulin today? And he's looking at me like, and so now it's like, I don't have any control over, which I'm glad I'm not responsible for it anymore. But it's when he was younger, like 16, I say, look, you're on punishment if I don't see it. I'm taking your cell phone if I don't see your numbers. If you don't send the information to the nurse, I'm taking your cell phone. Now he's an adult and it's like,
I think I run into that, I think, during COVID, and sometimes I get like fatigued and overwhelmed with all of it. So the pump that I'm on is like the best. It like gives me insulin. If I'm running too high, it gives me a little bit of bolus. It keeps track with so I have my CGM over here. This one tells my numbers. I get my numbers on my phone. If I go below 50, my boyfriend gets an alert. Yeah. So, and it with my pump, like if I'm above a certain amount, it'll give me like a 30% bolus of what it would normally be to bring me down in range. So when it works, it's amazing. I'm in range all day. However, there's a kink. My tubing falls out. So I'm a real.
Now, is that painful?
So yes and no. It's a whole lot easier to put the sites on my belly than like having to do like the injections. I switch out like every other day. My tummy, and I'm sure your son's tummy too. It's just like full of little pokes, little tummy pokes all over.
Yes.
It's not bad. I mean, it's like a little injection that you get every 2 days, and then that way you don't have to keep doing the injection. Like I said, when it works, it's magical. When it doesn't, it's a pain. Like I was out with some clients, so I'm a realtor. And it's like showing houses, and we had them they were looking at like a multi-unit, so we were going like up and down stairs, like multiples, walking through streets and stuff like that. And when you exercise, your blood sugar drops.
Oh yeah.
But that wasn't the case because my insulin pump had a kink in it. So I wasn't getting my insulin. So I was like super high. And like we were walking around and I was like, I didn't even have my purse on me because I'm so used to the pump. I'm like, it's always there. Like I don't have to carry a whole lot of things. I don't have to carry a meter because my site's on me. Like I have a backup bag in my car, which never gets used. And I was like 300s almost the entire day. And so I was like, I have to go back to needles right now because I don't have, it takes like a good 15 minutes to set up to like take off your side, put in a new one, to fill the cartridge again, to like, do the whole little dance with it. So it's like, well, okay, I'm back to needles, but for the next, 3 hours or so, I'm going to be in 300. So it's like,
Wow.
So yeah, but when it works, it's amazing. I love it.
Now, how with your diet? So, how did you learn about being able to manage your nutrition, your eating habits?
So I mean, like you guys did. I think for me as an adult, I didn't have a whole lot of support systems like you guys did. I didn't have, like, my mom was always freaking out, but she didn't go to the classes with me. She didn't know what was going on. My boyfriend was super supportive. So he's like, what do you need? Like, I can do what you need me to do, kind of thing. But it was really all up to me. Like like carb counting, where everything that you put in your mouth, you have to calculate how many grams of carb it is and do a ratio to how much insulin you need. And then depending on where you're at, you add a little bit more if you're high to bring it down more. At first I was on Humalog, which you need like 30 minutes ahead of time. So this is something else too that I think a lot of non-diabetics think like, oh, well, they have insulin. It's fine. They just like take a shot and that's it.
No.
But it's like to sit down and eat a meal. 30 minutes before you get that meal, you have to know how many carbs there are. So what are you eating? There's carbs in everything. Your salad.
Everything. Liz, I had no clue. Everything. Strawberries, blueberries, grapes. I'm thinking, okay, you can just eat fruit. And they're like, no, it's a lot of sugar. I'm like, what are you talking? Carbs. Oh my gosh.
Everything. Yeah. So like my coffee in the morning, if I put cream or milk, I have to count that, and I have to give myself insulin for just my coffee, even if I don't add sugar to it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like, I think at this point now, at first I was using, it's called like my lifestyle app or something like that. Mm-hmm. That I think it's used for like people that are like super healthy and exercise and stuff like that, because you can scan certain things. And it'll tell you like this has this many carbs and this many cups. That was also something else. Like, I think, so I'm Mexican, and in the Latino community, like everybody just always gives you food. We show
yes
love through food.
My son had a fit. I was like, we're gonna have to limit the amount of carnitas that you're gonna be eating. Yeah. He's like, I'm not giving up carnitas for diabetes.
No, and like that simple as like the salsa that you put on your tacos. Yeah. Like you could do like
vegetables. What's the problem?
But it's got carbs. But it's got carbs.
Yes.
Yeah, I think at first it was just like my little cup, my measuring cup was just like how I would serve everything. Like I remember doing like a cereal. I would first pour the cereal and then measure it out. And then I think now after 7 years, I can kind of see and visualize, although through COVID, I definitely got a lot more lazy with my diabetes care, because there's just so much going on. And I'm like, and you can't go out and you don't have your support system. Like everybody else got super depressed. I got super depressed. Like there's, I was definitely like running high and just like letting it run high, because yeah, I was just like burned out.
So how do you, in that instance, so like we experienced this because of COVID. I know with my son, he had bouts of depression because living with diabetes, it can be overwhelming. Because I know it was maybe a couple months after he was diagnosed. I'm thinking, I was like, let me see how difficult is it? You have to give yourself a shot every once in a while. So once I knew, I was like, okay, he has to give himself shots after he eats. So I set the timer on my phone, and I had it where, okay, when the timer goes off, I'm going to stop for a couple minutes because this is going to represent like having to shoot insulin. So let's see how it goes.
Having to test myself.
What's my blood sugar? When I tell you I was inconvenienced in like the first couple of hours, and I said, you know what, let me just turn this off. And then Liz, it hit me. It was like, you can't turn this off. You're inconvenienced only for a couple hours. This is for the rest of his life. He can't turn this off.
I think another thing too is like, there's so many decisions that you have to make aside from just like the inconvenience of like stepping aside or like, like being mid-conversation at a restaurant and being like, oh, the food's probably going to take like 20 minutes to get here. I think so. This restaurant looks like, we sat down, but they sit down. Mm-hmm. Like there's so much information that like you have to process through, or like, oh, we order drinks. Alcohol brings my blood sugar down afterwards. Not at the beginning, because at the beginning it has sugar. And then you've got to think like, I'm going to have like a piece of steak. That's a lot of fat. The fat will slow down the carb absorption. So I probably won't need the full insulin right now. I should give myself like only like a 20% part of the insulin, and then have it like at the end of the meal do more, because the carbs are going to add up at the end because of that fat is in there. Oh, but then I'm also going to have dessert. Like there's just so many things. And like just looking at the menu too, you're like, I think when I was first diagnosed and I was not doing shots like your son, I was like, is that piece of cake worth the finger poke to get tested to see where I'm at, the shot to my belly, and then testing afterwards?
So many factors.
Yeah, it's like that's
to consider.
It's not worth it.
Wow.
There's just so much. And like I think when I was first diagnosed that first year, there's like, the woo me, like there's times where I was just like, I would just cry because I'm like, this is so much. And it's like, why me? Like, I was like, I was healthy. I was walking everywhere. Like, yes, I had dessert, at dinner time, but it's not like I was like going overboard with sugar. And I think that's another misconception too, that when you say, oh, I'm a diabetic, people are like, oh, like, have you tried cinnamon? You should exercise more. And it's like,
yeah, I wish that was the case. I definitely, you have no idea. I wish that was the case. Just a few more sit-ups and, that insulin's going to get to rolling back in. Yeah.
And it's like, so I think I like to talk about diabetes, and this kind of annoys my boyfriend too, because he's like, once anybody brings it up, I'm like all about it. I'm like, this is what I do. This is how it happens. This is, like, I like to talk about it because
it's therapeutic.
Well, not just that, but I think there's so much, like, all the like the jokes about like, oh, there's this giant cake, I'm gonna eat it all and get diabetes. Like, well, no.
Doesn't work like that.
Yeah, like no, like your son was like an athlete, and
he's an athlete, yes,
and like
healthy,
15.
Yeah, and that's what they call the juvenile diabetes. And we went to Oak Park, River Forest. They have, I think it's the YMCA. They had family classes for therapy, talking to families and moms dealing with living through diabetes. And that's another I was so grateful because there were moms there where their 1 and 2 year old children
Yes.
were type 1 diabetics. And I'm thinking, I was like,
Yes.
how do you manage that? How can you make a 1 year old or 2 year old sit still every few hours and give them a shot?
Or have them wait 20 minutes to eat.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I follow a couple of moms. So when I was diagnosed, like I said, like I was an adult, so I didn't. I know that with um, juvenile diabetes, there's like camps and stuff like that that like kids go to and things like that.
Yes.
I didn't have any of that support system. Like I didn't even know another type 1 diabetic. Like like an uncle and my grandpa that are type 2 diabetics, but my grandpa was like a heavy drinker all of his life.
Right.
And my uncle.
I was under the impression diabetes came from you're overweight, you eat the wrong foods, and old people, old people got diabetes. That's how I didn't really get an understanding of diabetes until it was the movie. What was it? Roses, Still Rose. It's a movie with Dolly Parton and a couple other stars. Still Magnolias. I learned about diabetes through that movie. But other than that, I was like, I didn't know anything about diabetes.
Even in movies, it always upsets me. I don't know which one we were watching, but it was like an action film. And they were on a plane and it was full of like inmates or something. And the plane was like, I don't know, gonna crash or something stupid like that. And this guy's like, my blood sugar is dropping. I need my insulin. And I was like, no. Or like how they like, yes, I need my insulin. If I don't get it immediately, I'm gonna go high and I'm gonna be cranky and moody and thirsty for a while. I'm not gonna die immediately.
Yes, it's like you have 20 minutes to die, or if you don't have your it was one movie with Jodie Foster. Her daughter had diabetes and someone was trying to break into their house.
Oh yeah.
And she was slowly dying in the movie because she didn't have her insulin. I'm like,
and you're like,
when Alejandro doesn't have his insulin, sometimes he's like really lethargic, and other times he's like bouncing off the walls. And I'm like, if you've been watching what you eat, I was like, have you taken insulin? What's going on here? So yeah, it's a lot of misconceptions in the movies about diabetes.
Yeah. And they always like add somebody that's got diabetes because they're going to die right away. And it's like, I'm not going to die right away. I'm going to be real cranky and real mean and moody for a while, but it'll take like a couple of weeks for me to die from not getting insulin. I think, has your son been in DKA before since the first time?
Now, what you're going to have to familiarize me with
diabetic ketoacidosis. So like the diabetic coma?
No, so far we haven't had any issues since his first diagnosis. But he does have to check his ketones because his sugar does get to the point where we know that something's wrong, and the pharmacy or his nurse will call and let us know that he needs to check his ketones. He needs to come in and do it, or we can send I think like a prescription. But now that he's an adult, I don't have any access to it, Liz. Yeah. He's shut me out. He's like, no more.
I get that though. Like I think I understand the point where you're like, it's my disease, it's my life.
Very true. Very true.
I don't take care of myself, I'm gonna feel like crap. Not you. And also like, yeah, you can say you like understand and you know what's going on, but you don't feel it, you don't go through it, you don't pause it. So I get him. Like I think at first my mom was all about like, oh, what are your numbers at right now? And the same thing, I was like, Mom,
we have to step as parents.
Yeah.
With adult children with diabetes, we have to learn how to step back, just like as parents with adult children.
Yeah. but I think I get it. It's tougher, I think, knowing. So I had never been.
We have to come to a mutual understanding. I have to respect the fact that you love me and you want to protect me, but then we have to, accept the fact that you are adults and you can take care of yourself.
Yeah. So like I said, I was never diagnosed. So diabetic ketoacidosis is when your blood sugar is so high that your body thinks it's starving. So it starts using your fat, and that change between because you don't have any energy, it starts going into your fat, savings. So that's why we lost so much weight when we were first diagnosed, was because even though there was so much sugar going on in our body, the insulin is kind of like a key that opens that cell up to let the change from sugar to energy. Okay. So without that key, there's all this sugar running around, but your body still needs energy to function. So it starts using your fat. But that conversion from fat to energy releases acid, and it messes up your metabolism of sorts. So all of that extra stuff that's coming out from converting the fat to energy ends up the diabetic ketoacidosis. So your body shuts down, your kidneys, everything starts to fail. I was never on that because when I was diagnosed, like I said, it was late onset. Mm-hmm. So your son just kind of bam, I'm not making insulin. This is it. Yes. Mm-hmm. For me and my type of diabetes, it was kind of slowly. I was making 100% and then 80, 90, it kept dwindling down until I like I said, I haven't been tested in a while. So I'm sure I'm down to 0 or barely any too. Okay. So I had a DKA episode last month, and it was my first one, and it was scary. And I didn't want to call my mom because I knew I would freak her out and she would drive out here.
Yes.
So it started with, and this is something else too, with COVID, I was super afraid. Any stress in our bodies just messes everything up. Mm-hmm. Everything up. Mm-hmm. So yeah, a cold can send you into diabetic ketoacidosis, and you have to go to the hospital. There's nothing else you can do.
And you can't take regular cold syrup being a diabetic.
Yeah. But yeah, so they started me on the new meds because with insulin, another thing too is you start gaining weight. Your insulin regimen, as you increase that insulin regimen too, I don't understand this part of it and I hate it, but you start gaining weight. Mm-hmm. I've always been pretty normal, pretty average, not overweight, not underweight, just good. COVID happened and I definitely gained that COVID weight, and then the insulin didn't help. So I was up pretty high. And so my endocrinologist was let's start you on this new med that is for type 2 diabetics. And it's supposed to help with how much insulin you need, so your insulin absorption. And he's and another kicker too is it'll help you lose weight. I was cool, let's do it. Add it to the mix. What's one more thing? And he's oh, but it causes a little bit of stomach problems. You might feel pukey, nausea, but it'll go away in a couple of days once you get used to it. Okay. I was okay, cool. Nausea will help me not eat. And yeah, so I started taking that, and yes, I got nauseous, and so I wasn't eating. And then the next day I took it again, nauseous, not eating. But then I started actually vomiting, and then I was not feeling well, and not my insulin cartridge ran out, so I had to change it out. But I was sick, and I was I don't want to go through this process of I don't have the parts on me right now to show, but so this little guy is my insulin pump.
Mhm.
It's got a little cartridge back here that I switch out every 2 days.
Right.
You kind of just take a needle, get the insulin out of the vial,
Mm.
the insulin in the cartridge, change that out. The tubing, this is attached to me. Well, right now it's not it's showing apart, but it's a little cannula. It's a little plastic cannula.
Mhm.
It's just attached to me. This also switches out every 2 days. So it's not a hard process, but it's time consuming and annoying.
Yes.
So when
And that can be a lot. That can be a lot on you.
yeah, and like especially when you're like, I've got things to do. Like I've got errands to run. I've got work. I've got a presentation. Like, or simply I don't want to do it. I don't want to
Exactly.
get
Exactly. I have a lot of lounging around to do today. I don't feel like diabetic today.
Yeah, and so like I was sick. I wasn't feeling well. I hadn't eaten in like 2 days because I couldn't keep anything down because I was nauseous. So my body went in starvation mode.
Wow.
And then, 2 a.m. rolled around and I was like puking nonstop. And I like told my boyfriend, I was like, yeah, no, we got to go to the ER. And yeah, once I got in there, like I was like a shell of a person. Like I remember going in and like, I was so dehydrated too that they couldn't find veins.
Oh, wow.
So they had to bring in like some guy with some machine and he was like doing like a sonogram kind of thing to look at my veins. I was still like puking and dry heaving the whole time. And they needed to get they needed to get IV in there because I needed an insulin drip and I needed sugar. They also do like a sugar drip because you still need like, energy. But yeah, it was kind of like a blur. Like I was like, I remember getting there. I remember waiting for a while because here in Chicago, I mean, it's a big city. It's Chicago. No matter what you do in the ER, we live right downtown. So by like UIC.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I go to like UIC, but
that's where I graduated. That's where my master's from UIC. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but like my
Tri-Taylor, so I'm a little west of you.
Okay. Yeah. No, like that's right here. I'm on like Halstead and 14th.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. UIC Village. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we were driving. Like there's like Rush, Cook County. There's like all the hospitals are right there by Tri-Taylor.
Right. Yes. I walked to all of them. My hospital is Rush. My family hospital is Rush. Yeah.
So that's where he ended up taking me. We were driving over there and I was like, I don't care which one, just that one says emergency room. That one says emergency room. Go there. Drop me off right there. Go figure out what to do with the car. I need help. And yeah, I was just like passed out the whole time. But yeah, like and I didn't know that they actually keep you in there for that long. I thought like when people went into DKA, they would just like, oh, here, we'll pump you something and then like go home.
Yeah.
They kept me there for 2 days and they didn't feed me.
Oh, wow.
No, it's part of like the treatment.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's scary.
Yeah,
and I didn't want to tell my mom because I was like, it's something that they tell you that happens. So it's not like you're expected. Like, I think my doctors were also always telling me like, these are the symptoms. This is what you need to look for. If you start vomiting nonstop and you can't bring your blood sugar down with just insulin, you need to get to the ER like ASAP. So I knew what I was looking for and I was like prepared for it. But yeah, once you're in there, you're like, oh,
this is real.
This is real. And like tests every couple of hours, they would just come take my blood. And the nurse was giving me all sorts of like, your ketones are at this, your this is at that, your liver function is at this, your this is at that. I'm like, also when I was first diagnosed, like I'm sure you did it too. You just Google diabetes.
Yes, like, okay, let me find out what is it. It was just really mind blowing, all the things that you don't understand, especially about nutrition when
Yeah.
it comes to diabetes.
I think too, like at first they were just like carb count, and then they keep.
That's overwhelming by itself.
Yeah, but then they keep
Carbs, because I thought carbs is just bread or
bread.
pasta.
Yeah.
No, everything has carbs. Everything.
And then they like bring you up to like Excel, like AP carb counting or AP nutrition, where you're like, you got to keep track of like the proteins and the fats because those affect the insulin absorption rate differently, or like when you treat a low, drink juice, but now they're like, you should have something with a little bit of protein, so drink juice and eat some nuts so that it stays up there, so it doesn't just like come crashing back down, because the juice will just spike you up and then you'll crash. Like
Yeah, orange juice is definitely, you have to be very careful with orange juice.
Yeah. It's a lot. So I was 24, so I was like old enough to drink. So that too was really scary, because you're like, oh, well then I need like a ramen diet or something that doesn't have sugar. But then I quickly learned that at night after you go out drinking, even if it's just like a drink or two, your blood sugar crashes.
Oh, wow.
And the other thing too is like you're drinking and you feel a little drunk, but that's very similar to feeling low.
So you're like, is the alcohol or my
drunk
insulin? Yeah, is my insulin dropping or my sugar dropping away?
Yeah, like another thing too that I found out, we went to Adventureland. And like you do those rides and your adrenaline rushes and you feel like your stomach is like floating and stuff. That sometimes feels like I'm low. So every time I go on those rides, I'm like, what's my blood sugar at? Where am I at? Oh, okay. No, it's just adrenaline.
Or this is a ride. It's not my blood sugar.
Yeah. I think we're also like so aware of what's going on in our bodies. I don't know, like, so I was tested positive for COVID at the beginning of COVID, and I was freaking out because the news kept telling you, if you have an underlying health condition and you get COVID, you're going to die.
Right.
So it's like, shoot, I have an underlying health condition. I have COVID now. And like for that too, the same thing, my endocrinologist was like super on top of it. As soon as I was like, I have a slight fever, I went to get tested. Like I wasn't even like fully sick. But I was like I said, like you're hyper aware of your body. So I went and got tested and it came back positive. That same day they called me and they were like, we're doing this.
How do you feel when you found out that you were positive?
I was scared
COVID.
I was scared shitless. Like I was like,
more scared than you found out you had diabetes.
Yeah, because with like diabetes, you're like, okay, I think I know so and so. They take insulin. Like they lived and like they're old and they have diabetes. They're fine. But the news kept telling you, if you're old or have an underlying health condition,
that's it.
Yeah, that's it. You're dying. So I was definitely freaking out, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to be one of those people that gets lucky and like doesn't have any symptoms. Like that's just not going to be me. Like my body's already like super messed up. Like there's already so much wrong with my body. Like this is going to end it. But yeah, I got this mono something antibody treatment.
Okay.
And I went to UIC. They gave me like an IV or like whatever the meds were through an IV for 2 hours. I hung out there for a while, and then the next morning I woke up completely symptom free. Wow. So I was very lucky, because I was like, but with that treatment, like I think they were saying like you needed to be within 10 days of getting symptoms.
Okay.
So within 10 days of having symptoms, that treatment would work. But if you were past those dates, they wouldn't give it to you and it wouldn't work. So yeah, it was super scary. It was super, super scary. Like, you're like, this is gonna end it. Like, a cold can send me into the ER. What's COVID gonna do?
Right.
And then too, like, all during COVID, I was super scared of like going outside and like not going to work and not hanging out with people. Like, I know I got really upset at my boyfriend because he was like, well, I'm gonna go spend, I think it was like his birthday or something, and he's like, my family's coming over for brunch or something. And I was like, you're fucking kidding me? Like, your brother is flying in from Arizona. Haven't you been watching the news? Everybody in Arizona,
it's a hot spot.
Everybody in Arizona has COVID. And yeah, my boyfriend got COVID right after that.
Okay.
But he was sick for like a week, locked up in the guest room.
Okay.
But I didn't get it, which is something that's like, I also don't understand that about it. Like, I was like, the day before he tested positive for it, I remember being on the couch and he was like, my head hurts. So like, he had like his head on my lap and I was like massaging his temples. And so like, I'm like, his face was right here. Like, I was breathing his air. Like, and I didn't get COVID that time. It's strange how.
Now, did you have to adjust your insulin intake when you had COVID? Did any of that change
No.
your experience?
So the good thing, like I said, with the insulin pump, it takes care of the base rate.
Okay.
So if I'm coming up, it gives me a little bit more. If I'm coming down, it stops giving me insulin. So I don't think about that base rate quite as much, which is really helpful. Before the update to the, I think it's like an IQ, bolus IQ or something like that. It's called the program that they updated. Before that, I would have to figure out for my period, weirdly enough. When I was on my period, I would have to increase my base rate because, I don't know, like hormones change or something.
Right. Didn't think about that.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, but I did notice that slight change. I can't imagine how people have babies, how they go through pregnancy with diabetes. I think even before I went into the hospital for like that nausea thing, vomiting is very scary to me because I'm like, if I'm vomiting and my blood sugar drops and I drink juice, but I spit it out, does my blood sugar still come crashing down? Or like that I'm just like,
do you have to digest or do you just have to have it in your pores? Wow, that's a lot to think about. That is a lot to consider.
So I'm always afraid of vomiting. But yeah, there's I think there's like a lot that you don't that like I said, like people think like, oh, you have diabetes, take a shot. And that's it. But there's so much more that goes into it. Like if when I go to the gym, I have to bring down my insulin intake about an hour before I go to the gym because working out uses like more sugar. So I don't need insulin for it because I'm like exercising. If I don't know, like if I'm swimming, I have to be like, oh, I can only swim for this amount of time because I will need insulin later on. So I'll take this pump off for now, but then I have to come back out there in a while. Another thing too is like when we go on vacation, if I'm like out in the sun, my insulin pump can't get hot because if insulin overheats, then it doesn't work.
Oh, that's right.
So yeah, there's a lot to think about. And we were on a cruise in the middle of the Caribbean, and my pump broke because it overheated. And
So do you get a replacement flown in? Do they have
they sent me a
replacements on the
replacement.
ship?
I was on a ship, so it was like, where could we send the replacement? I was in like NASA, which is like a tiny little island in the Caribbean, but we were only there for a couple of days, and then tomorrow we were going to be in the Dominican. So I ended up going down to the ship's doctor, and I was like, I just need to buy some long-acting insulin. Because I was like, I have like my insulin that I can take with meals, but the long-acting insulin I didn't have. And they were like, oh yeah, we can do that, but we need you to see a doctor, and you need to pay that copay, which is like $500 just to see a doctor on the boat. And I was like,
let me just say, insulin is expensive, even with insurance.
Everything is expensive. Like these little things are like a couple $1,000s for the month without insurance. But yeah, they were like, you have to pay this, and your insurance wouldn't pay for it because we're in international waters. So your insurance wouldn't cover it. And I was like, well, I don't need to see a doctor. I was like, I'm not sounding arrogant, but I know more about diabetes than your boat doctor does. I was like, I know
I've been living with this for years.
Yeah. I was like, I just need you to give me this thing. And they were like, no, we can't do that without you seeing the doctor. So I was like, I'm just going to step off the boat, and the next dock we go to the pharmacy. I paid like $20 for like a month's supply of insulin down there. Yeah, no insurance. Yeah, and I was like, should I stock up more?
Seriously.
Yeah, and it's like that too when I go to Mexico. Like my family lives in Mexico, so I go for Christmas. And I was like, you don't need.
My husband's from Mexico, from Jalpa.
Okay. But yeah, you go down there, you don't need a prescription. You just, it's $20 for like 2 or 3 vials, and bye. And here it's
been honest, with insurance, almost $300 a month.
Yeah, it's. I mean, like the parts for the pump. If you switch insurance, like when COVID happened and I lost my job, initially I lost my insurance, so I went on to like state insurance, which is super nice, very helpful that I had that. But during that transition, they were like, oh, well, now you have to send all your pre-approvals. Your doctor has to send all your pre-approvals and your numbers again to this new insurance, so it covers it. Otherwise, you can't get what you need. And it's like, I've been on this for like 6 years. I need it. My doctor says I need it. Yeah. My doctor says I need it. I say I need it.
My body definitely says I need it.
Who are you to tell me no? It's, yeah, calling up all the insurance people, and I think just having to prove that you need it. And like, who in their right mind would just like want to get needles for fun? Like, it's not a thing.
Anything I want to falsify, not having to falsify the use of needles.
No. Or like, who else would want cartridges for an insulin pump if you don't actually have an insulin pump? It's not a fun thing.
Yeah. Wow.
Has your son been on like a pump or like the technology part of it?
He has a pump. He has it attached to the side of his stomach, like up under like his armpit area, but on his stomach.
Is it the Omnipod? The tubeless one?
Is it the tubeless one? You know, I don't know. I've stepped back. I'm just a phone call. Mom, I need insulin. Can you pick it up from the pharmacy for me? Yeah, I'll stop and pick it up on my way home. I'll do that, and it'll be here. So just come and get it when you get a chance.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just now at the point. Have you went to the doctor? I know I'm stepping back, but make sure. Yeah, I've scheduled. Okay, because I don't want to cancel you on the insurance. So just make sure that you are going to the.
Yeah, that's also really scary. Because how old is he now?
Oh, you're just 24. 24.
Yeah. So what? Like this is his last year on your insurance, right?
Well, no, he's still in college, so
Okay.
So I got a few more years, maybe.
You should check on that because I think that is also like a big issue. That once we turn a certain age, we're not longer on.
I know it's like 26, but if you're in college, then you can,
yeah.
And it's a lot that goes in there. Yeah,
it's
a lot we got to figure out.
I mean, I think like my 2 days at the hospital last time I was in there was like $25,000.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Yeah,
I don't doubt it at all.
And I can't imagine how people do it without insurance. Or like sometimes I know certain insurance companies give you like a ratio where you can only have so many vials a month. I was like, who are you to tell me how much insulin I need?
Yes, my body. Trust me. I don't want extra insulin. I don't want to OD on insulin. I just need this amount, and it's not what you're telling me that I need.
No,
trust me, it's not.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's like I said, like I definitely go through those phases where I'm like, I don't want to deal with it today. I really don't. I'm just gonna be high, and my blood sugar is just gonna be high all day today because I don't want it today. I don't want it today. Yeah. And then there's other times where I'm like, I'm gonna be so on top of it. I'm gonna have like a perfect week of
carbs and just eat perfect today. Yeah. I remember my son. We had those issues of you can't eat this. You can't. And then it was the point of, look, this is what I'm going to eat, Mom, and I'll adjust accordingly. And, for about a month, we had like serious issues until I said, stop, leave him alone.
Yeah.
Leave him alone. And he's still alive.
Yeah.
He's still well.
Yeah.
So, you just have to, because for him, it wasn't realistic to be so stringent with his diet. It wasn't realistic for him.
Yeah. No, me neither. I think it's part of it. Maybe like they start you off with super regiment. Like this is how many carbs you can take. And then they kind of like, okay, go off on your own and live your life.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, me neither. I'm like, if I want dessert, I'm going to have dessert.
Yeah.
Then I give myself more insulin because.
Yeah. Because I know with him, I was like, you're going to eat that whole bag of cookies? And my mom would be like, he's a growing boy. I was like, he's a diabetic boy. And he would just take the cookies and go to his room. And I'm like,
I think sometimes too, it's like more out of spite that we do it because you're like, you can't tell me what I can and can't do. I can do whatever I want.
So you're not going to let me eat these bag of cookies. You're not.
Yeah, like, I only wanted two, but now I'm going to eat them.
Now I'm going to have the whole bag.
Yeah, watch me.
Look, I'm 17. You're going to tell me I can't have these bag of cookies. Like,
yeah.
Okay. Eat the cookies. Eat the cake out of me.
Yeah.
Well, Liz, I want to thank you. I have never enjoyed a conversation about diabetes. I have never enjoyed a conversation about diabetes. This is the first time that I have actually had a pleasant conversation. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Like when it came to diabetes, I get emotional. I would just start to think like, what could have happened? My memory go back to, when he first was diagnosed, and it was just like trauma. I'm literally traumatized from when he had that whole experience. But this conversation has been a really pleasant and an informative conversation. Um, he's taught me to step back and mind my own business, but listening to you and hearing a perspective from an adult with diabetes has also made me understand how to respect his boundaries. And I think this is a good conversation for other parents with adult children who have diabetes to understand that it's not our life.
Yeah.
It's not. And to step back and allow you to manage your life and live life as a diabetic, because, like you say, it's your life. We don't have diabetes.
Yeah.
You're the one that's living this, and you have to make the decisions.
So many
And,
decisions.
yes, it's a lot of decisions that you have to make, and you have to make those decisions. We can't do it for you. And as adult parents, we have to learn how to protect from a distance.
I mean, don't
That,
get me wrong. I love that my mom like calls me, and when we talk, we're like, "How are you doing? What are your numbers like?" It's annoying, but it's like, yeah, she cares.
you have to protect from a distance, because with Alejandra, it's a pain in the butt. Oh, mom, I need my insulin. I haven't picked it up in a couple of days. Can you go? You haven't.
You know,
But I'm happy that he's calling me and asking me. I'm happy that he's alive to call me. So it's just, learning the boundaries, and just having mutual respect, respecting the parent's perspective and respecting the child living with diabetes perspective. Your adult, let me make that adjustment, the adult child. So I really thank you for sharing your experience lifing while diabetic, because that's what's your life, while being a diabetic. Thank you so much for sharing. And I want to thank our viewers for tuning in to the experience of being a diabetic. Um, this month, I'm going to continue to discuss diabetes. Today, we heard the perspective, the experience from an adult with diabetes. Next week, we're going to hear from the experience of children and parents with young children who are diabetic. So please continue to tune in to our conversations. And as I close always on Safe Space, please take a moment to shine your light in the dark. Thank you so much for tuning in.